Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go. That's right.
I'm the Reverend Dr. Jayme Mathias, pastor of Holy Family Catholic Church in Austin, Texas. Where can you find God? Or, perhaps rather, where can you find the gods? It's an age-old question raised by today's readings. And there are two different views that you can take. You can believe that God is far away and distant, that God is in the heavens or on a mountaintop, or that God is like the ever-receding horizon that seems to step back with our every advance, or that God is some infinite mystery that we can approach only asymptotically. Remember, in math, an asymptotic line keeps getting closer and closer to a given line, but will only touch that line or axis at infinity. According to these views, God is transcendent. Or you can believe that God is near us, that God, for instance, is with us or in us, and or that we are in God. This is a very mystical view of God. According to this view, God is not transcendent, but immanent. Many world religions have elements of both transcendence and immanence in their belief systems. Buddhists, for instance, believe that transcendence can only be attained through an appraisal of God's, or the Buddha's, immanence. Hindus believe that various transcendent gods are subsumed into a greater immanent being, the Hindu Brahman. And Jews, Muslims, and Christians, including Catholics, have tended to believe that immanence is a characteristic of our transcendent God. So where is God for you? For the ancient Jewish people, God was unknowable. And so they needed a person like Moses to brave going up that mountain in order to experience God and to bring back God's law. Or they needed a person like Enoch, who went up to heaven and came back with God's instructions. Enoch's writings were known by New Testament writers and were accepted by such early church fathers as Clement of Alexandria, Irenaeus, and Tertullian, but Enoch didn't make the cut when we formulated our canon of Catholic scriptures. That's why today's first reading is so astounding. We find Moses telling the people that God's commands are not so mysterious and remote. In fact, in today's first reading, Moses tells the people that God's commandments are not up in the sky, that you should say, "Who will go up in the sky to get it for us and tell us of it, that we may carry it out?" Nor is God's law across the sea, that you should say, "Who will cross the sea to get it for us and tell us of it, that we may carry it out?" Moses continues, "No, God's law is something very near to you, already in your mouths and in your hearts. You only have to carry it out." Where is God's law? Is it some unknowable mystery from some faraway place? Is it found in some complex system of rules in a book like the Bible? Moses tells us that God's law is already in our mouths and in our hearts. God's law is within us. It's written into our very being as human beings, if only we would listen to our hearts and carry it out. This is a very immanent view of God and of God's law. In today's second reading, in his letter to the Colossians, St. Paul is going head-to-head with the Gnostics. Who were the Gnostics? They were a group whose beliefs seemed very seductive to some of the early Christians. The Gnostics believed that some people have gnosis, or knowledge about God, and others don't. So you can imagine the situation and the division that could be caused when some people start saying, "I know God," or "Let me tell you about this God that you'll never be able to know yourself." Yikes. The Gnostics also incorporated many features of Greek philosophy into their beliefs, saying, for instance, that wisdom, or God, desired to create or give birth to a God outside itself, a God that would share in its divine fullness, or pleroma, but would be outside its divine totality. Wait a minute, St. Paul said, you're really talking about Christ. And so in his letter to the Colossians, Paul tells the people all about Christ. How is that Christ is the image, the icon in Greek, of our invisible God. How it is that Christ existed before all things. How it is that all things were created in Christ and for Christ. And how it is that the divine fullness, that pleroma, was in Christ. And whereas the Gnostics said that the angels were as great as Christ, or even outranked Christ, Paul sets the Gnostics straight, telling them that Christ has power even over the four ranks of angels, the thrones, dominions, principalities, and powers that were believed by the Jewish people to guard the seven rings of heaven. In fact, Christ created those angels. But all that sounds so theoretical, so pie in the sky, right? We're talking about transcendent realities, and what in the world do they have to do with our daily lives? And that's where Jesus steps in today's gospel. Jesus seemed to grasp the difference between theory and practice. He knew the theoretical world that was bolstered by the 613 laws he followed as a young man, and he preferred to focus on the practical details of life, like how it is that we're called to help those in need, as the Good Samaritan does in today's gospel. So, where is God for you? On several occasions, Jesus points us in the direction of our neighbor, telling us that when we feed the hungry or give drink to the thirsty, we're actually encountering Him. When we visit the ill and imprisoned or clothe the naked, we encounter Him. And when we stop to help those in need, like the Good Samaritan does in today's gospel, we encounter God. God is not so far away. God is not in some heaven light years away. Look into the eyes of your neighbor, your brother or sister. God is there.